I have a photo on the wall of my office. It's a mosaic of an old royal typewriter. Noticeably, in the middle of the artwork is a missing piece about the size of an index card. Not surprisingly, the name of the original piece is called writer's block. I have spent more than 30 years as a journalist, mostly at newspapers and mainly covering the NFL and the Dallas Cowboys. In that time, I've written literally thousands of stories. And in my experience, some stories write themselves. Others take work, rewrites and edits and more rewrites and more edits, and sometimes you just never get it right, no pun intended. No matter how long you stare at the screen or swear at the screen, it just doesn't read like you want it to read. It sounds a lot like life, doesn't it? Life is like writing a story. When you open a Word document, you get a blank page. The blanking cursor pops up, urging you, really imploring you, to begin. This is your beginning. We're all born with a blank page and the urge to fill it with the words that will tell the uniquely epic story of our lives. Some of our stories are only 500 words with much more of life waiting to happen. Others of us have longer stories with pages and pages of words to match the years and experience that life has provided. Words like joy, pain, success, failure, love, and disappointment. You have a story, I have a story, we all have a story. I recently attended a scholarship banquet at my alma mater, Texas A&M. Representatives of the College of Liberal Arts had interviewed soon-to-be graduates asking for the first word that came to their mind to describe the completion of their degree. The wordle included words like relief, blessing, and joy. I'm sure you're experiencing many of the same words today as our graduation adds to our life stories. My word choice is honor. It's my honor today not only to earn my degree, but to represent the online Master of Mass Communication today and in the future. You have a story, I have a story, we all have a story. A few core components comprise a fully formed story. The first is the byline. Your byline is your name, and your name you've been given establishes ownership of the words to come. You're responsible for the content, good or bad. You also have the lead. Once upon a time, it was a dark and stormy night. It was love at first sight. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. These are all familiar leads to us. The first sentence is the most important part of a story. This is at the point when the reader decides whether it's intriguing enough or worthy enough of the reader's time to be drawn in and captured. It's what the story is about, yet only a tease. You must keep the reader wondering what comes next. It's who we are and why we were here, our purpose really. What is the lead of your story? The best story I ever wrote was about longtime football coach Phil Bennett, then the defensive coordinator at Kansas State. His wife was killed by a lightning strike in 1999 while on her daily morning jog. Wrong place, wrong time. Coach Bennett gave me a beautiful story about Nancy during an hour-long interview. In fact, the memories of his wife were so enchantingly vivid that the story wrote itself. It was one of those that I just had to move out of the way. But I needed a lead, an attention grabber, a sentence to explain what the story was about without giving away the ending, while simultaneously enticing the reader to trust me enough to want to read to the end. This was how my story began. Phil Bennett might never have married Nancy Harris if he hadn't been afraid of losing her. Nancy was an emergency room nurse at John Peter Smith Hospital in Fort Worth. Phil was an assistant football coach at Texas Christian University. They had dated for only a year, and now Nancy wanted to know whether they had a future together. "I'm not ready," Phil repeatedly told her. Phil was sharing an apartment with another assistant, Dave McGinnis, who would go on to become the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, and enjoying life as a 26-year-old bachelor. Then the young doctors at John Peter Smith began taking an interest in Nancy. Soon, over enchiladas and chalupas at the original Mexican Eats Cafe in Fort Worth, Phil popped the question. "Let's go look at a ring," he said. When he bought that ring in 1982, Bennett never imagined that "Till Death Do Us Part" would come so soon. How do you live without your wife of 15 years? How do you raise your 2 children without their mother? How do you continue the transient life of a football coach without the one who keeps you together? Nancy Bennett, 41, died August 28, 1999, 17 days after being struck by lightning while jogging in a new subdivision near the family home in Manhattan, Kansas. 3 months later, all the homes in the middle-class neighborhood are complete. But how do you rebuild a life? You have a story, I have a story, we all have a story. I have been blessed to cover 24 Super Bowls and 7 Olympic Games. In Beijing in 2008, the 14-hour time difference made many of my stories old news by the time my audience began reading. It was a challenge to write in journalism what we like to call a second-day lead. Jeremy Warner was seeking to become only the second man ever to repeat in the 400-meter dash at the Olympics. His hometown of Arlington, Texas is where I live, so I'd gotten close to his family. I asked Jeremy's father, Danny, if I could sit with the family during the race, and as luck would have it, they had an extra seat. This is what I wrote. Jeremy Warner turned the corner on the home stretch and found exactly what he needed. 15 of his closest friends and family stood cheering him. His hero's welcome came in an empty concourse of National Stadium nearly 2 hours after he finished a disappointing second to teammate and rival LaShawn Merritt in the 400-meter dash. Well, his mother, Linda Warner, asked, "Can we see it?" Warner dug deep into the pocket of his Team USA sweatpants and pulled out his silver medal. It is not what he came here for, but everyone still wanted to touch it, hold it, and take pictures with it. We expect so much of him, his high school coach Mike Nelson said, "I think we forget that this is the Olympic Games and he just won the silver medal." You have a story, I have a story, we all have a story. Just like in writing, in life we have a lead and a conclusion. Our lives contain transitions, conjunctions, metaphors, and irony. Life is filled with exclamation points, a lot of those we hope, periods and question marks, vivid details and description. We use the backspace and the delete button. Sometimes we hit Control-Alt-Delete to restart. Sometimes we save, and sometimes we trash. We are all authors of our own story. How is your life story going to read?